I am not sure how to number this podcast because the last one we did, we haven't aired yet. So
Oh,
podcast number 15 with Anthony Wood, one of the stars of the film Ip Man 2. I guess I can't really call him a star. He played the referee, but it was an important part.
mm,
We had a great
so
discussion. There were some issues with the sound and the video, so that didn't go out on YouTube. Not yet, anyway. So we're going to redo that one. So this is technically the 16th podcast that I've done. So we're just going to call it podcast number 16, even though you may not have heard number 15 yet.
okay.
So welcome, Andrew Parker.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you also go by a professional name, Dewey Parker, is that
I
correct?
do, yeah. This is actually, like, you're one of the few people that know me as Andrew Parker. And it's because of you, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, before I started coming to your gym, I was looking up gyms in Shanghai and trying to find the right place for me to do MMA. And I saw this guy, Ramsey Dewey. Ramsey Dewey. Your name was all over the place on your website and stuff. So when I showed up to the gym, I didn't want to be like, hey, I'm Dewey, and then, to steal your thunder. I really didn't want to start stealing my MMA coach's thunder on the first day. So I just said, I'm Andrew. It's stuck at the MMA gym. But yeah, elsewhere, people know me as Dewey Parker for sure. Oh, it worked too, because I'm very professional.
Hold on just one second, Andrew. You're going to hate me because I forgot to turn the recording on the laptop. So let's just hit that button right here.
And start over?
Let's just keep it going. So welcome
okay.
to podcast number 16.
Hey,
Podcast number 16. For all you viewers on YouTube who are wondering what happened to podcast number 15, well, it hasn't aired on YouTube. I'm going to put it up on SoundCloud. But this is officially podcast number 16 with Andrew Parker. If you didn't hear the intro, for those of you listening on SoundCloud, we had a little hiccup for the YouTube version right here, so yeah. Andrew Parker was just talking about his professional name, Dewey Parker.
that's it. I don't want the fans to be confused, in
Yeah.
case anyone has ever heard of me before. I would hate for them to be confused.
So Andrew is a stand-up comedian by profession here in Shanghai, China.
Yeah.
And that may confuse a number of people who think of China in terms of tourism. Like, why would you go to China and not do all the super Chinesey tourist stuff all the time, constantly?
Okay.
But if you've lived here for a while, if you've lived here for any meaningful amount of time, you want to do other stuff besides, say, see the Great Wall of China and stare at Terracotta Warriors, I think.
Yeah. Don't get me started on the Terracotta Warriors, man.
Oh, man. I'm now curious about your views on the Terracotta Warriors.
I'm against them.
Really?
Yeah, man. I've seen a lot of, like, the really famous sites. I shouldn't say a lot, because there are so many, amazing places to see in China.
Yeah.
I've seen a handful of them. I've lived here for almost 6 years now. I've been around. I've seen the big ones. Do not visit the Terracotta Warriors. That is my recommendation. It does not compare to the other things that you can see in China. Such a disappointment.
Yeah. At a risk of trying to sound too much like Joe Rogan, if you could get like a fist from your face with them, actually 2 fists from the face from the microphone with these, that,
Oh, even closer?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would be great, man.
All right, let me lean in so you can really hear how upset I am about these Terracotta Warriors.
Yeah, now everybody is going to start accusing me even more of trying to be the next Joe Rogan, man. About a fist from your face.
Okay, I'll try to keep that in mind.
Actually, too. I mean, if you got fists my size, yeah.
All
So,
right.
looking at this recording, Andrew, you kind of look like a giant compared to me. Now, Andrew is taller than me, but in real life, when we're standing up, he doesn't seem this much taller than me. But
I got a big chair.
maybe it's the chair, but also, as we discussed before, I think I am mostly legs, with a short torso and long legs, whereas
Yeah.
Andrew is
I got long legs, I got a long torso, I got the body of a snake.
I was about to say you were a more normally proportioned human, but
No. No, I don't think so.
yeah.
Have you been to see the Terracotta Warriors, by the way?
I have not. I've been to Xi'an, but
Oh, okay.
the only reason I went to Xi'an was to train and to fight.
Nice.
So all of my
I
time in Xi'an was at the Xi'an Sports University. It was at a stadium. It was inside a boxing ring,
hmm.
just in a hotel, just fighting and training, and that was it.
Well, that's time well spent, I think. And I love Xi'an. It's a great city, and there are definitely great things to see there. You know, the drum and bell towers. The city wall is a great day. You know, you can rent a bike and ride around the city walls. It's a really nice experience. But the Terracotta Warriors, I mean, it's another one of those Chinese tourist experiences that is tough to do. You know, first of all,
Yeah.
you have to take a bus way out of the city. You know, it's a whole day that you're putting into this. And I just remember when we finally got there, I was like, real, like, that's it? You know? I mean, like, you guys, everyone has seen one statue, okay? Now imagine seeing that statue hundreds of times. That's the Terracotta Warriors. You've seen a statue? Imagine more statues. That's it.
Oh,
Plus,
wow.
and they're still working on it. Like, they're still digging these statues out.
Oh, really?
Call me when you're finished excavating them. It's like it's an archaeological dig in progress right now. They're still working
Wow.
on it. So there's some of the places that's built like a museum. You know, you go around and you can read about them and kind of look down into a pit where they've completed the digging. But there's a giant room that's just like in progress. People are still tapping and brushing these statues out of the ground. Yeah, it's not for me, man.
Yeah, there are a lot of Chinese tourist sites that seem really great in the brochure, or when you see them in a movie or something like that, and you actually get there and you realize it's just a line of a million people.
Oh, that too, yeah.
And when I say a million people, I literally mean a million people.
Yeah, actually, someone told me they had a friend going to Xi'an this week, which, as you know, is one of the biggest, probably is the biggest for domestic travel inside China. And yeah, they were going to Xi'an, probably going to see the Terracotta Warriors. What a nightmare that would be! You wouldn't be able to see any of the statues through the people.
And I think the longest tourist line I waited for, besides the expo when it was here, was waiting in line to see the body of Chairman Mao
Oh, yeah.
over in Beijing and
Yeah.
Tiananmen Square.
Mm-hmm.
His body's like preserved in formaldehyde, or it's mummified. I don't know it's how they did it, but he's lying there in this glass case, and you get to see him for like 5 seconds, and they're like, move on. And then the next guy comes, looks at him for 5 seconds. You're not allowed to take any recording equipment in there, no cameras, nothing like that. There's all kinds of security there. But the line is so long. So when I say a million people waiting in line, that is no exaggeration, that is no hyperbole. We waited for like 5 hours. 5 hours with
What?
each person getting like 3 to 5 seconds tops to see this
That's
guy.
incredible because I think that's the only place, the only one I've heard of where they actually limit the amount of time you can spend looking at it. I have heard that. They're very strict about it. And still 5 hours?
5 hours.
Wow.
But
That's
I went there
insane.
with my wife, and she said, "We're only going to do this once. I really want to see Chairman Mao. I want to tell people that I saw it." I was like, "All right." And it was hot. It was summer. There's no
Oh,
shade.
man.
The sun is beating down on us. We're roasting. We're getting sunburned, and all these people are just staring there. All these local Chinese people making the pilgrimage to see the great leader or whatever.
Mm.
And yeah, man, I was shocked that many people want to see Chairman Mao's body, but yeah.
I've been to Forbidden City a few times because that's one of the ones you always take people to. You know, if you're traveling around China, that's, you know, in the top 5 to see, definitely. But I've never seen Chairman Mao's body. I don't know. I've never been inclined enough to wait in line to see the dead body.
Yeah, so I'm going to save all of you out there, like 5 hours of waiting in line, or if that was your sole purpose of coming to China, you know, a 14-hour
no.
flight from across the world, from wherever you are. Here's what it's like. You wait in line, and you wait in line for 5 hours. Nothing happens. You wait in line. The sun beats down on you. You feel like quitting. It's a test of endurance. It is a test of will. But then you finally get there, and you're like, oh, where is he? And they're like, get out. Next.
I saw part of his hand. What did you see? Wow.
So I have this vague memory of like seeing, I don't know, a body through a glass case, and I was like, oh, is that even real? Like,
Yeah, tinted glass. Can't really see.
I mean, for all I know, it could be like a wax mannequin or something.
Yeah,
And
that's true. Who knows?
yeah,
I mean, why are they limiting the time so much? Ah, maybe because there's just so many people waiting to see.
I mean, yeah, when you have 1,000,000 people who want to see one thing and you give each one of them 5 seconds, man, that adds up. We got there early in the morning too.
Wow. It's funny, it seems like wherever you go, there's some connection to Mao somewhere. Like, I went on a school trip somewhere, I can't even remember where. It wasn't that big of a tourist destination. But they were like, oh, this farmhouse over here, Mao lived here for 2 years. What? Oh, yeah, he tended the fields. Like, he was a farmer for a bit.
Yeah.
Don't look any of that up, because I'm not sure. But, he slept in that room over there. Like, he was always around,
Yeah, I've seen some places like that here in Shanghai, like downtown towards Xintiandi, like the French concession. There's a spot. I don't remember where exactly, but it's like Chairman Mao. Basically, Chairman Mao was here. I don't remember what he was supposed to do there. Like, he lived there at some point for some period of time. I don't know how long. He might have just slept in a hotel. I have no idea.
The guy got around. He showed up at a lot of places, and they marked every one of them.
Yeah, man.
But there's so many places in China that I found to be so awe-inspiring. You hear about them, you see the pictures, you show up, and it's still like, it takes your breath away.
Yeah.
Terracotta Warriors, back to that. That's one of them where the pictures look better than the real thing. So, there's so many places you can go and just, they're heart-stopping, beautiful. Like Great Wall, I've heard about it, I've seen it, all that. But when I went and just thought about what went into building that wall, that blew me away. Far more than, hundreds of stone
The Great Wall is
statues.
pretty cool. Like, even the spots which are very touristy with, thousands of people crawling all over them.
Yeah.
Still very cool.
Absolutely. And if you go in a time that's not, high season or during a Chinese holiday, then the crowds are not bad. Of course, they're spread out over, the world's longest man-made structure, so that helps.
Yeah. And there are all of these different spots on the wall that are popular for tourism. And so one thing I learned is they have like these I don't know what to call it, like slides that you can go down the mountain from the Great Wall. Like different versions of them, like these sleds. It's kind of like a roller coaster.
Yeah, I did that at Mutanyu, which is outside Beijing. And it's like a one-rail roller coaster with no power. It's just gravity taking you down. And if there's nobody in front of you, you can really fly. And it's beautiful, of course. It's a wonderful view on your way down, and you're having a good time instead of, riding the cable car down.
Yeah, so Andrew, or do you want me to call you Andrew or by your stage name?
You call me Andrew because you're comfortable with it. That's fine.
Okay. So you were explaining to the folks at home before I jumped on and turned on the hit a switch on my laptop over there about why you chose the professional name Dewey Parker.
Well, it's a nickname. I've had it for years and years. My brother started it when we were kids, and then my cousin, my really younger cousin, couldn't say Andrew, so she really popularized it. She just called me and my brother the Dewey Boys. So it caught on. And
man, I remember being called the Dewey Boys.
Yours was actually accurate. Those Dewey Boys. Yeah, so we were the Dewey Boys, but it's just a nickname. And it just stuck, and I like the name. I like it a lot better than Andrew. So I go by that most of the time.
Interesting. Man, I'm having all these childhood flashbacks. I grew up in this small town, southwestern Idaho, with all these folks saying things like, "You one of them Dewey boys?" I'd be like, I don't know if I should say yes or no if you ask me like that.
Were there a lot of Dewey boys around?
No, we were the only ones.
Oh, but you guys made a name for yourself.
Apparently we had a reputation. I don't know what that reputation was, but when some old prospector-looking guy comes up to you and says, "You one of them Dewey boys?" You're like, "Are you going to shoot me if I say yes?" Because, man, people open carry in Idaho, man. You never know.
Yikes. Open carry, that's like where you see them? You see the gun? Oh, okay. All right.
Andrew is Canadian, so I'm going to have to explain American gun terms to him. Open carry means you carry a gun on your person so people can see it.
That's right. I don't
For example, in a holster on your belt.
Yeah, I shot a gun like twice in my life. And that was on a farm. It wasn't anything. I shot at a can and I missed.
Really?
Many times.
Wow.
Oh yeah, terrible at it. But in my defense, we never do it in Canada,
Yeah. I've had a few discussions with Canadians about guns, and they basically say in Canada it's a very expensive and very dangerous hobby.
Dangerous.
That's what he mentioned. Firearms can kill.
Yeah, of course, guns are inherently dangerous, more dangerous than not having a gun, I would say. But it's very, very controlled in Canada. So I think that cuts down on the danger. People that have guns are taking them to the shooting range, and there's a ton of work that goes into just doing that. And then the other people are, people that have large properties, farmers and etc., which is where I shot a gun.
Yeah, at risk of turning this into a political podcast, which I really don't want to, because when the politics of gun ownership and whatever comes up on the internet, the first thing I do is skip. But, man, growing up in a small farming town where everybody has a gun, everybody has guns in their pickup truck in the back. Seriously, in the back window, a gun rack
I've
with
seen
shotguns and whatnot. They open carry all the time. It's just normal. But the thing is, like, everybody knows each other in these small towns. And so nobody cares. Nobody's worried about it. But you go to a major metropolitan area, and I think there's a lot of anxiety there. But China's like the polar opposite of that, because, man, I remember the first time I walked down the street here in Shanghai. I remember thinking, like, whoa, nobody has a gun here.
Wow, that's great that stuck out to you.
Yeah.
That I would never.
That's like the first thing I thought about.
Wow. Me, it's the opposite. If I see a gun, it's like, well, that guy has a gun, oh my word. Even if I'm, where do we see guns? When we see soldiers with them, at Tiananmen Square, whatever. You see someone that's supposed to have a gun, I still look at it like, what's this guy doing? What's he up to?
Yeah, man. Like, the last time I lived in a major metropolitan area besides Shanghai was in Buenos Aires, and I got mugged all the time, man. All the time at gunpoint. There's so much violence and so much crime and, so many shootings there. And so it was just so common to have guns stuck in my face, and, in case anybody hasn't heard my advice about self-defense on guns, give the mugger what they want, walk away alive, don't try crazy kung fu on them. Man, that's a one-step technique to get shot, man. But yeah.
Yeah, you've been mugged how many times? 6?
6 times at gunpoint,
and
yes.
never been killed? Is
never
that right?
been killed once.
That's right. Okay.
You cannot argue with statistics like that. 100% success rate.
Not bad.
Just give the muggers what they want.
Yeah, that was never noteworthy to me because, coming from Canada, I mean, I lived in a city where there is violence in some places, but very infrequent gun violence, of course. And Shanghai, I mean, I've never felt safer than when I'm living here. It's amazing.
I know, right?
It doesn't matter when you're out. You could go home, be walking home, in the middle of the night. I feel as safe as ever.
And it's not just the fact that nobody has guns and the violent crime is extremely low here. It's the fact that, at least for me, I look out at the general population, I'm like, man, I could beat all these guys up. I mean, I'm just saying. Oh, man.
Oh, no.
Am I alone in saying that?
What? You can't say that. Well, I mean, you're a trained professional, which helps.
Yeah, man. A lot of people outside of China are under the impression that everybody in China is a kung fu expert.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
And this could not be farther from the truth.
Yeah, it's something that comes in handy. Man, the other night I had, I don't even know what to call it. It wasn't even a scuffle.
Yeah.
But I was walking with a friend, and I saw a guy kind of grab on to his girlfriend. And I looked over, I was keeping an eye on it. And then, I was expecting them to kind of separate and laugh or whatever, because, every couple does that, a bit of rough play or whatever. But when they separated, it was pretty clear that it was serious. She tried to walk away. He grabbed her and put her against a wall. So right away I crossed the street because, that's something that really bothers me. Yeah. And this guy was small. He was very small. He had somehow found a girl that was smaller than him, just a tiny little thing. And yeah, he had her up against the wall, and I walked over and, said, "Hey, are you okay?" And I was surprised. She ran, over to me.
Yeah.
and it was pretty obvious this guy had been hurting her, and she was really scared. She was crying. So my friend, thankfully, I was with my friend Zen, who you know.
Yeah.
She talked to the girl, and they were able to speak Chinese and figure things out. But for a long time, we were standing there on the sidewalk, and he kept trying to get over to her. So I was holding him back, and not definitely not striking him or anything. But it was a situation where he was really small. He didn't know, he had no fighting experience, and it's a situation where I felt really good that I could, had some experience. I knew a little bit about what to do, where I could hold him in such a way, that didn't hurt him, but I could control him, or at least keep him away from, swinging on this girl or doing, who knows what. And he was getting so riled up, and there was one time he pressed into me, and he kind of ended up down, and so I put like a standing guillotine on him, like not like on him, it was just one arm.
Yeah.
But to let him know, this could get bad. And I told him I don't want to hurt you, and he started punching me in my hip. I couldn't tell if he was tapping to the choke or punching me. So it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But I was able to hold him for a bit, and then we called her we got a Dee Dee for her, a cab, and I hold him back so she could get in the cab by herself and go away. And I'm pretty sure they were going back to the same place that night, but who knows, maybe buy them some time apart and try to cool down a little bit.
Yeah, that is an interesting story for a couple of reasons. Even though violent crime is extremely low in Shanghai and China in general, it is very common to see people who are completely unwilling to intervene if there is violence or if there is any sort of altercation.
That's so true.
They'll just, walk the other way and ignore it. Or if there's a fight breaking out, maybe they'll pull out their cameras and film
a lot
it.
of that, yeah. I was actually really impressed while we were kind of going at it, and I was pushing him back. There was a guy who stopped and just watched us for a bit, didn't take out his phone. I was really happy about that. And he just looked kind of I mean, I'm sure at first it looked pretty bad, like a tall foreigner, pushing a guy who's a lot smaller than him. So it might have looked bad at the first glance. But he saw the situation, saw that I wasn't trying to, be violent or anything, and then he just walked away. But you're right, there is so much of that where people, want to do the opposite of help. They want to get as far away from that situation as possible. And unfortunately, it's for good reason, which now is kind of outdated. But, there's been those laws in China where they haven't protected people who try to help.
Yeah.
And people have gotten in trouble when all they were doing was trying to help a victim.
Yeah, and self-defense laws vary greatly from one country to another. I mean, self-defense is really a legal term, meaning it's a legal excuse to use violence to do something that is otherwise illegal, but in a situation where it is now acceptable. I think the actual law in China is that as long as a crime is in progress, you are allowed to defend yourself. If the crime is no longer in progress, then any violence you use is at that point a crime. But then they also take into consideration how much damage has been done, who's hurt worse.
Yeah.
So if you are being attacked and you beat the other guy up and he looks like a mess afterward and you don't have a scratch on you and the police come, they'll be like, wait a minute, who beat up who here?
Yeah, blood speaks very loudly here, definitely.
So there's a lot to be said about grappling, the value of grappling for self-defense, especially here, man.
Yeah. I was talking about more Good Samaritan laws, though. If you're trying to intervene in a situation that you're not a part of, that's what people have been really scared of. Like, if a victim is hurt and you stop to help them, people have gotten in trouble. There is precedent for that in China where the person who just stopped to help got blamed.
Yeah.
And the thinking was, well, why would you help this person if you weren't responsible for them being hurt? Which is insane. But some people do legitimately want to help others.
Yeah.
But that is in the process of changing across China. It's definitely changed in Shanghai, where they've updated those Good Samaritan laws, and now it's a lot easier for people who are trying to help. And actually, they taught us in first aid, if you are trained to help, then you do have an obligation to use that training.
Yeah, if anyone isn't familiar with the culture of of China, at least like 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, yeah, it was different. I mean, if somebody was like dying and bleeding in the street, it was not uncommon to see people just walk by and be like, not my problem, I don't want to get involved. Maybe they'll sue me if I try to help.
Yeah, you might be on the hook for their medical bills if you take them into the hospital or something.
So that kind of thing did happen. It happened a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thinking that has gone on for a long time, and it's very difficult to change. It'll take a long time to change. And now that the laws are changing, people's thought will change, as time goes on.
Man. So we've talked about a lot of serious issues so far.
Yeah.
Like guns and violence and self-defense. And just so, if anybody's tuning in right now, Andrew is a stand-up comedian.
Right. You can't tell that from talking about fighting people on the street.
Stand-up comedians addressing the serious issues. But,
Finally.
if you think about it, isn't that what comedians do, though? A lot of them.
A lot of them do get
address the serious
really
issues.
into serious things.
Sometimes very political, and sometimes just on a very personal level.
Absolutely, yeah. That's something I definitely do not do.
Yeah.
The stuff that we're talking about right now, I would never talk about on stage.
Yeah.
I try to make everyone feel comfortable and have a really good time. That's what I want. I want people having fun. And I find if you're talking about gun violence, I don't want to get people bogged down on serious things, God forbid political things. So I try to create like a real fun atmosphere, do some silly things. I do have a very long bit about Ted Bundy.
Interesting.
But I don't do it very often because of that reason.
Oh,
Trying
wow.
to keep it light,
Has that ever gone just like really bombed when you've done that one?
Well, it's like I said, it's quite long. So I watched the documentary. Not documentary. It is not a documentary. I watched the movie about Ted Bundy on Netflix, starring Zac Efron.
Okay. How was it? I haven't seen it.
It's really good.
Okay.
And Zac Efron is amazing as Zac. Oh man, like Zac Efron being a handsome, charismatic serial killer that you love to take home to mom and dad. Just he does such a great job. And you see that and you're like, okay, yeah, I can see why these women wanted to help him out, I mean, he had some pretty, talking about the Good Samaritan thing, like Ted Bundy absolutely took advantage of that. He would be on crutches, trying to load books into the back of his car, ask a woman to help him, and then, next thing you know, she's in the back of the car. How do we keep getting onto these serious topics, Ramsey?
Stand-up comedy, man. You had a whole bit about it.
Yeah, anyway, so what I was saying, I watched that movie, I had a lot of stuff to say about it, and it added up. I was talking about Ted Bundy for like 8 minutes total, and one time I definitely talked about him for way too long, and the audience started to get depressed, and I was, I'm sorry guys, I have a lot to say about Ted Bundy. I have more material on Ted Bundy than the police who were looking for Ted Bundy. I've got a lot to say. So yeah, I had to cut that one short and go back to talking about, trying to speak Chinese or something.
Yeah, man. Stand-up comedians, a lot of them are wizards at taking topics that are just really depressing. We're just talking about sad aspects of their lives and spinning it in a way that makes us laugh. Like Eddie Murphy, for example. He had this bit he did in his Raw special. You seen that one?
Not for a really long time.
Where he talks about how he always wanted to go to McDonald's when he was a kid, and they were kind of poor. And his mom would say, "McDonald's, you want a hamburger? I'll make you a hamburger." And his mom would make him some like crazy homemade hamburger that was just not very good. And I laughed so much because that exact same thing happened to me. Exact same thing. My mom would be like, "You want to go to McDonald's? We're going to McDewey's." And then
that kind of works.
My mother is British. And like very old school British from back in the day where they would boil all the flavor out of everything nothing was delicious and, war rationing and all this stuff. And so hamburger meant something radically different to my mother. And so, man, when I heard that Eddie Murphy bit, I just exploded like somebody else understands what I went through, man.
My thing was always, we would hear, "You want to go there? We have food at home."
Yeah.
Oh, well, not that food. But yeah, I mean, if you dig deep, he's talking about being poor, growing up poor. Yeah, he's talking about serious things, but it's a very lighthearted example of how that manifested itself.
Indeed.
It's a good way to go about it. I don't know. I find some comedians get really bogged down in these serious things, and worse than that is they have an opinion on it, and then their comedy becomes a way of telling you their opinions on things, and that's something I don't really get into. I don't like that. Sure, you can talk about, all kinds of hot button issues, you know, things that might make people uncomfortable, and you can make jokes about that for sure. But as soon as you get into saying like, these people are wrong, I'm right, and here's why, then that's not really comedy anymore. You're just doing a TED Talk with some jokes in it.
Yeah, I've seen a few acts like that, and yeah. I mean, if they're speaking to a crowd of people who are on the same page politically or whatever, they'll get cheers, not laughs, but cheers. Oh man, what's her name? There was this Asian American comic who did exactly that. She would just give like a socio-political spiel, and there were no laughs, just lots of cheers and claps from a like-minded audience who supported what she was saying, and I remember watching it like, I'm not laughing, I'm not enjoying this. What's the point of a comic that doesn't make you laugh?
Oh, absolutely. That's number one rule. You got to be funny. And even if you're talking about things that upset people, if it's funny, well, you'll get a lot more leeway.
Yeah. So, besides Ted Bundy, man, you ever gone darker than that?
Darker than Ted Bundy?
Yeah. Is that even possible?
Oh, man. I think... Oh, actually, yeah. I have a couple jokes about Dee Dee.
Okay.
What I mentioned before, the ride-sharing.
Yeah, it's like Chinese
service.
Uber, basically.
Chinese Uber, yeah, exactly. Dee Dee drivers famously murdered a couple passengers last year.
Ooh.
And I had some jokes about that, which, yeah.
Making the audience feel very safe about taking a Dee Dee to get home.
It was like, hey, how'd you get here tonight? Dee Dee? Oh, great. I have some stuff to say about Dee Dee. But yeah, I did. I had this bit. I don't really do it anymore because it's. I'm worried about it being outdated. Like people won't remember the Dee Dee murders, which they have never been called. By the way, there wasn't enough murders to characterize them like that. But I think they killed 2 people.
Yeah. So was it the same guy or 2 different?
No,
people?
I think it was unrelated.
Oh.
Might have even. I think it was 2 different places. Obviously, I don't do a lot of research for my jokes, but. Yeah, I haven't done it in a long time because I think people might forget about those murders. And the way I do it is kind of the fact that it's Dee Dee is kind of the surprise ending. So I built it up like I was auditioning for a commercial. I'm really nervous. You guys mind if I try it out for you? Okay, well, here I go. And I would do this commercial bit. Oh, has this ever happened to you? Of course I use my commercial voice. Has this ever happened to you? You're in a rush. You need to get somewhere. You hail a regular taxi. It's cramped. It smells bad. And the driver can't even read the directions on your phone, whatever I'd say. When the ride begins, he's all over the road, driving erratically, even dangerously. You laugh to yourself, hey, is this guy trying to kill me? Well, here at Dee Dee, we'll actually kill you. Dee Dee, we meant for it to be pronounced die. So it was, it was
okay.
It was very much at Dee Dee's expense. It wasn't like, hey, you guys are going to get murdered tonight. But I did talk about that, and like Dee Dee also had new safety regulations. They have now where you can like add a friend and show them what ride you're taking. They're really taking steps to make it safer. And so of course I had jokes about that too, about if your Dee Dee driver tries to kill you, you can block him for a whole year, Give him some time to think about what he did.
Give him a bad review.
Yeah, 1 star. He stabbed me in the liver.
Oh, man.
Locking me in the trunk was a bit much, okay? Yes, I had some jokes about that. That was, yeah. Do you want to hear my darkest joke?
Sure.
All right. I don't mean this one, all right? This is a joke, remember?
Oh my!
But
are we gonna get banned from YouTube or demonetized if we put this out there?
Oh, we're monetized. Okay, yeah. I said to a female audience member, I said, "Oh, do you use the new safety regulations?" And she said, "No." I said, "Oh no, I think you really should. I actually think the regulations are in place more for women because statistically, women are the most fun to murder."
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So that one, I mean, if you like jokes, that one does okay. If you're a normal person, you're pretty quiet.
Yeah. Man, depending on the audience, man, depending on the setup, that could go so many different directions.
Yeah, I mean, the woman I said it to didn't like it.
Yeah. So you're one of those comics who talks to the audience a lot. I haven't been able to
No.
make it out to your show because I'm always coaching at the gym when you're doing your stand-up.
I definitely don't. Especially when I first started out, I still am to an extent very very scripted. So I write out my jokes. And most times I perform, I know exactly what I want to say. Some guys just know kind of the order they want to say things in.
Yeah.
But I know like pretty much word for word what I'm planning on saying. It doesn't always go like that, but I'm certainly planned out very well. And I think that's kind of playing to my strengths more. I think I'm a stronger writer and a stronger performer, like kind of an actor. And other people, they have a lot more improv skills. Let's say that, because I'm having trouble saying the whole word. So that's a muscle I haven't really used that much. It's something I'm trying to work on now. I got some good advice from Andy Curtin, who's like one of the pioneers of English stand-up comedy in China. And he said, don't try to do crowd work, which is what I was trying to do. I was like, oh, open mic tonight, I'm just going to go up with 1 minute of material and fill the 5 minutes, the rest with crowd work. That was my plan, And then I talked about it with him afterwards. He said, don't plan to do crowd work. But if something happens, and it will, with the audience, don't be afraid to stay in that moment and kind of explore it. Because that's what would happen with me. Someone would say something, I'd say, hey, that's right, buddy. And then I'd get back to script. Because I don't want to go off book.
Yeah.
But now I'm trying to work on that more. Like, oh, what did this guy say? Try to play off of that. Try to work it in. And then when that's finished, okay, I've got my material to fall back on.
Ah, that's cool. That's interesting. Man, I remember when I was a kid, I loved watching stand-up comics so much, but I had the hardest time speaking to other people. Not even being funny, just talking to other human beings. But I loved stand-up comedy so much, and I had this goal, which is to figure out what made people laugh. And so I went to this thrift store, and I found this book called How to Be Funny.
Wow.
So I'm reading through this, and it's like this very scientific analysis of how to be funny, and it was probably all very bad information. Like it said, for example, the only thing I really remember was the letter C is the funniest letter in the alphabet. I was like, oh. And it gave some scientific sounding jargon to explain why, like that k sound. For example, why did the chicken cross the road is much funnier than why did the goose cross the road. I don't know if that's true, but that's what the book claimed. And so when I was trying to be funny, I tried to insert as many k sounds as possible.
There is, I've heard that before. There's a comedian, Gary Gulman.
Yeah.
He's putting out daily tips. He's been doing it all year on Twitter. He puts out tips for comedy and for writing comedy. And that was one of his early tips, was that he said B sounds, what did he say, B, P, and also that K sound. And he said he didn't know this, like he didn't think about it. He was just kind of doing it automatically. And then he actually thought about it, and now he, tries to put more of those sounds into his jokes and into his punchlines. So his example was Buick is funnier than Nissan. And I don't know. Like,
it also has the K sound in there.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I bring it up. And like, I would have to hear a joke. Is there any way to compare that? Like, you can't say the same joke twice and replace Buick with Nissan. Like, oh, okay, you didn't laugh as hard.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't know. I don't know what their process was for those scientists that actually tested this. That would be interesting to find out.
They might have just got a bunch of little kids in front of them and said different words. For example, I know for a fact that little kids laugh a lot more when you say poo-poo as opposed to bowel movement or something along those lines.
That's true. Yeah.
Grown-ups are different, though. For example, if you say poo-poo, they're like, are you talking to a child? But if you say bowel movement in a public setting, oh man, that's pulling the rug out from under people's feet. They're like, are you my grandmother?
Yeah, or if you get like too scientific with your terminology. And that's another thing, because there's comedy in being very specific sometimes. And that's kind of the same thing if you're talking about a bowel movement. Yeah, it's very specific.
Man, that is the term that my mother always used to describe the act of pooping.
In a British accent.
In a British accent, she would always say, Do you have to have a bowel movement right now?" And
Such a classy language.
I didn't realize that was not normal until I went outside of my home and talked to other people, and they'd be like, "Yeah, nobody else says bowel
So
movement in America."
You went to school and you said, "Teacher, I need to make a bowel movement."
Yes, pretty much. And then the other kids would beat me up at recess. Sometimes they wouldn't wait till recess, man.
Get the half Brit.
Yeah, pretty much.
Your dad's not British too, is
my
he?
dad's American.
Oh, okay.
So my parents split up when I was very young. I grew up with my mom. Grew up in this very British household in the middle of like redneck Idaho. And so that's pretty much what happened. People would be like, "Get him! He talks different. Go back to England where you're from." I'd be like, I've never even been to England.
Yeah.
He said bean instead of Ben. Beat him up.
I've never been to. Oh man, it's
Yeah,
like
man.
every word with you.
Yeah, I would say now, for the most part, when speaking conversationally, I pronounce most words like an American, although a lot of my American viewers are very confused about where I'm from because, I'm a American-born British national who has lived in China for the last 10 years, who also lived in South America and traveled all over the world. And so my idiolect is a little different than most people who grow up in southwestern Idaho.
So I think that your voice is or your accent rather, is very neutral. Is that the problem? That it's so
Yeah,
neutral they can't place you somewhere?
I think that's it. That people want to be like, "Oh, you're from New York, you're from Boston, you're
Right.
from wherever," right? Based on what they hear. And when they hear someone that they can't place, it plays games with their mind, and they're like, "Wait, something's wrong here. This
But
guy's off."
that's something that you've worked on, though, right? Trying to be very neutral and naturally speaking, and not have any kind of Idaho accent or whatever.
Yeah, I guess you could say that because, when I was a kid, after being beaten up so much and just picked on so much for the way I talked, there was one point I spent like 2 years not speaking to another human being outside of my home.
Wow.
I kid you not, I was just terrified to speak to people because of the consequences of opening my mouth. It was horrible. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just not going to talk anymore. And yeah, that's a terrible way to live your life. It really is.
Yeah, that sounds rough.
But
were you training at home? Did you look at it as though, all these people are making fun of you, and did you look at yourself and say, "Oh, there is something wrong with the way I talk and I need to change it"?
No, and that's probably part of the reason they kept beating me up is because they were like, "You gotta change." I'd be like, "No, I will change for no one."
Okay.
But yeah, like to this day, I still pronounce a lot of words the British way, like say bean instead of ben. I just can't do it. Vitamin instead of vitamin.
Oh, wow.
My kids say vitamin because my wife does.
Yeah.
And I think they love her more than they love me. I mean, it's just how children are. They love their mother more than their father. It's just nature, man. But yeah, I can't say vitamin. It sounds like it just sounds wrong to me. But other words like aluminum, I'm totally fine saying that instead of aluminium, or schedule instead of schedule.
And of course, you don't use, like where they use a completely different word, you don't use any of those words. I've never heard you say lift or...
Yeah, like let's take a ride in the
Perambulator.
lift to the top floor.
You ever say perambulator?
No. My mother has said pram and
Nobody says
perambulator
that.
and all that, but I mean, living in America where you can't say those words or people just don't know what you're talking about, a lot of that gets filtered out of the vocabulary pretty quickly. But there was a lot of language we specifically used at home. For example, instead of a couch, we would always say settee.
What?
Yeah, I know, settee.
I don't think I've ever heard that word before.
Yeah, I never heard it outside of my home.
Settee.
And then my aunt, my mother's youngest sister, called her couches the Chesterfield.
Yeah, I've heard that one. That's a Canadian thing. People
Yeah.
think that we all say Chesterfields, and maybe my dad says it, but I think that's because they're like antique couches. Like my dad loves, he's got to take like this couch that's 100 years old and reupholster it. They are not comfortable, by the way. But like maybe that is a Chesterfield, because it's like
Yeah.
classic and it was built by a team of engineers. But now when it's just like sofas and couches flying off the assembly line, I wouldn't call that a Chesterfield. But I don't know, maybe that's just me. No Canadians are just walking around saying it haphazardly.
That is interesting. My mother and her youngest sister, they moved to North America from England in their 20s. My mother moved to the United States. Her sister moved to Canada. So
Oh,
I guess that's why she's saying Chesterfield. But when I heard that for the first time, when I visited her up in British Columbia, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I looked around my mother like, I looked at my mother and said, why do you say settee? And she says Chesterfield, and everyone else in the world says couch.
yeah.
What is going on?
We just have our own system. Yeah, I think it is a brand of cigarettes, Chesterfield.
Sounds
Or
like a cigarette brand.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. If it isn't one, I'm pretty sure it is. I think
Chesterfield,
it's an old,
the brand more
yeah.
doctors recommend.
That's right. I smoke Chesterfields.
That's how cigarette commercials used to be in the 1950s. Have
Yeah.
you ever seen those old 1950s?
Yeah, or it was a doctor like in the white coat smoking a
Yeah.
cigarette. 4 to 5 doctors prescribe Chesterfields.
Oh man, there was this old Marlboro, maybe it was a Camel commercial, I don't remember. But I saw it, I think you can still see it online. And this woman comes into a doctor, she's like, "Doctor, I'm coming down with a cold. What can you do for me?" He's like, "Smoke a pack of these every day."
Oh no. The common cold?
Yes,
Oh,
it'll
wow.
clean you right out. Yeah,
I
man.
thought it was for like if you're feeling tense or something. Because like nicotine will calm you down, right? Especially
man, there was that
especially
too.
if you're craving nicotine. That'll calm you down.
It was the cure-all for everything, man. It was the cure looking for the disease. And this is a
Nice.
common trend in medicine, if you will. They come up with a procedure or a medication or something. They're like, "Well, let's make money off this. How do we do it?" Yeah, turn it into the next snake oil. So yeah, cigarettes was that for a very long time. It was prescribed as medicine, a cure-all, and
All the bad things
all the bad
started
things.
out as really like widely used prescriptions, I guess, like the snake oil things.
Yeah, but the
Like
crazy,
cocaine.
Yeah, cocaine was in Coca-Cola, which was originally a headache medicine. But the crazy thing is, like back in olden times, like the 1500s, 1600s, when tobacco was started being farmed in America, it wasn't just for smoking. It was actually for legitimate medicinal uses for treating bruises and poultices and whatnot.
Oh, external.
Yes, externally. Like put it on the skin, wrap it up to increase the rate of healing. And I don't know how much modern medical science has looked into that, but I would be very interested in finding out.
Doesn't sound like as much of a money making scheme as cigarettes, so
Yeah, treating
probably
bruises.
not that much.
Yeah, put some ice on it, walk it off. That's modern medical advice.
Yeah,
But-
nobody's getting enough bruises to use a pack of tobacco a day on their bruises, man.
That's true. That's like a once in a while kind of thing.
Yeah, better to smoke a pack a day if you're selling tobacco.
Unless you're training for.
If you're selling tobacco,
Oh, there we go.
which I'm not. If you're training for what?
If you're training for combat sports and you're constantly kicking people in the shins and whatnot, then yeah, you're going to get a lot of bruises on your legs. So, man, big tobacco. There's a whole separate market for you that you are not capitalizing on.
Yeah, Ramsey recommending tobacco here
Oh man,
on record.
coming from a guy who's never smoked or touched tobacco in any way, shape, or form in my life, yeah, there you go. So,
Good for you, man. I've tried a couple times. Thankfully, it's not for me.
yeah,
I mean, I've smoked a few cigarettes, and I do not like it at all.
interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know. Works for some people. Thankfully, I didn't try one and get addicted or something.
Yeah,
I don't know if that really happens.
I mean, so some people actually enjoy it. Like, and I remember this girl was talking to me, and she said she was hopelessly addicted to cigarettes, and she really wanted to quit. I said, well, why did you start? And she said, I really liked the smell.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I like the smell of a pipe. And that's all. Like my neighbor when I was growing up had a pipe, and I remember he would take out the trash, 2 bags of trash and a pipe in his mouth like Popeye, and I'm like, oh, what is that? It smells so good.
Yeah.
But then once I grew up, and they were like, yeah, it's actually like really gross. Like it's worse than cigarettes. It's tobacco like in your mouth. It's a bowl of tobacco. And I'm like, okay, I haven't even tried that. That sounds way too disgusting.
Yeah, man.
Maybe I could just put one in my mouth and take out the trash, and that would be the same.
Do you remember that actor who played Ernest in all those Ernest movies, like Ernest Goes to Camp, Ernest Saves Christmas?
I mean, I'm aware of those movies. I don't know
I'm
the
blanking
actor.
on his first name. His last name was Varney. Was it James Varney? Man, I don't remember. Mr. Varney, anyway.
Okay.
Who played Ernest? Man, he was interesting guy. He was he was a chain smoker, and it eventually ended up killing him. He died of lung cancer. But as soon as he was diagnosed with lung cancer, the first thing he did was quit smoking immediately, cold turkey. But then he died of lung cancer anyway, which is, it's sad. There's another fun fact about Jim Varney. That's his name. Jim Varney, the guy who played Ernest. He was one of those guys who was highly requested by the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Like, a lot of children wanted to meet Ernest
Really?
because he was a popular children's TV character and whatnot. So he would always, like, the dude was famous for never letting the kids down. He would always show up in character and whatnot, meet them at hospitals and so on.
Oh, that's really nice.
Man, we're talking about dying kids now. I bring a stand-up comedian onto my podcast, and we're talking about dying children and serial killers and people, dying of lung cancer from tobacco and gun violence. And what have we done, man? What have we done?
Man. Poor Ernest.
Poor Ernest. So,
That's so sad.
lull
Okay.
in the conversation. Master Wong is a person who exists out there on the internet.
Oh, man.
Let's bring him up, because the internet won't stop bringing him up every time I get online.
Okay.
Man, have you seen this guy?
I'm aware of his work, just because of what we've seen, and what you've, what's the word for it? Rebutted?
Yeah. Now, to be honest, the first time somebody said, you've got to watch this Master Wong guy, I looked at him, and I thought he was a comedian. I honestly thought he was a comedian. I thought, okay, he's doing funny stuff online. He's this over-the-top character.
He is very over the top, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a great character, though.
Yeah.
I will say that. And I really like the intensity he lends to his videos. Like, if you are going to attempt some of his moves, you absolutely need to have that intensity, that he really brings, that doosh, 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 that kind of thing.
If you're going to fight off a knife-wielding maniac with a stroller, or as the British say, a perambulator,
Right.
then, yeah, you got to bring it, and you got to bring it hard, man.
Yeah, and he's a great, maybe he's a great actor, but he really brings it in those videos. It's impressive.
Yeah, so I was confused about that for the longest time, about whether or not he is a comedian. Because if he's not, he totally should be, man. I mean, the last video I saw, his spinning stroller defense against the knife
Oh,
attack
that was a real example?
Yeah.
I thought you were just doing a callback for perambulator.
No, that was a fairly recent video, actually. Like,
So you're walking your child in a baby stroller.
well, I guess you could do it in that situation, but the situation he presented, you are taking the stroller out of the back of your car,
Okay.
the trunk of the car, or the boot of the car for the British fans out there. This is going to be a running gag, I guess.
Okay.
So you're taking the stroller out of the I don't know whether to say boot or we're not in America. You're not an American. I mean, you're Canadian. That's part of North America. How do Canadians feel about that, by the way?
What, North America?
Yeah, being people from the United States of America claiming the title Americans.
Oh, I think that's fine. But I don't like it when people say I'm American.
Ah.
So like I've had people say, "Oh, because you and the rest of Americans, they'll like lump me in." And I say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. No, I'm from Canada. That's a different country." And they were like,
Yeah.
"Well, North America." Like, no,
Ah.
you did not say you North American.
Yeah.
You called me an American. And so adding that one word, that's the difference. And yeah, it's because Americans took the word for their own country. But yeah, if you say North American, that's me too.
Yeah. South Americans will always use the distinction. They'll say North American. Like when I lived in Argentina, they would always say, "Oh, you're a North American."
Oh,
You're like, yeah, that's very
Oh,
specific about the continent, I guess. So
okay.
you're a South American? Yes, we're South Americans.
Seems too general.
But yeah, they would never just say American. You're an American. It would always be you're a North American.
Well,
So
actually, a lot of people assume I'm American too. Probably just because where we are, there's a lot of
yeah,
Americans, far more than there are Canadians. That's true of anywhere you go, actually.
yeah. And some
there-
Canadians are so Canadian you can tell right away. Like that guy's Canadian. He said pasta, kind of weird. But other Canadians go under the radar and they're like,
that's me.
yeah.
I think I also speak pretty neutrally.
Wait, say pasta.
Man,
Do it. Do it.
pasta.
It's oh, you just said pasta like an American, man.
Well, you're putting me, if that's the thing. A lot of people ask me, like, "Oh, how do you say this word or this word?" And I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute, I don't know."
But you know what they want you to say, right?
Yeah, but you got to hear me say it in context when it slips out,
Yeah.
because I will say pasta sometimes. I'm
Yeah.
sure I've said that, but especially when I'm here, when I'm removed from, I've got like a handful of Canadian friends. I'm removed from most Canadian speakers. People are speaking all kinds of English. I'm far more aware of it, and also teaching too. Ramsey said I'm a stand-up comedian. I also have a day job.
Yeah.
When I'm teaching kids, it's I've taught for several years now, and I've had to put a lot of thought into the words that I'm saying, speaking very clearly for little kids. So yeah, I'm a lot more careful about what I say, and those Canadian things I think slip out a lot less often. People now are like kind of tickled when I say "a" in normal conversation, which I do. I like that word. It's a very useful word for me, and I'll say it without trying to be Canadian, or trying to cover up being Canadian. That's a word I like. And then it's like, "Oh, Dewey, you're Canadian. We love it when you say A." But
Do you ever feel pressure to like cover up being a Canadian, be an undercover Canadian? If you
no, not at all. I just think, the reason I brought that up is that, yeah, there's so many Americans here that people assume, "Oh, you're American."
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, some people think that Canadians have that really thick Fargo accent,
Yeah.
which I never hear in Canada. Certainly not where I'm from.
I think the funniest thing is Americans who try to act all offended when you assume they're an American. Like you're just assuming that I'm an American when they totally are.
Yeah.
Have you seen
How
that?
dare you?
How dare you? I could be anything. I could be from Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia doesn't exist as a
I
state
could be
anymore.
from the Czech
The
Republic.
Czech Republic. There we go.
I could be a Czech Republican. Uh-oh.
My family's home.
Hopefully they won't find us behind this fake wall.
We're doing a podcast over here. So, for those of you watching this on YouTube, I'm filming this at home as opposed to at the conference room where I filmed my other podcast, because that conference room is no longer available for use. So
boy.
Who's that?
We're under attack.
my
Hey.
my kids are invading the set right here. I'm filming this at home. We've got a screen hanging up here.
Hello. Who are you?
This is my 7-year-old Eve.
I am not Eve.
You're
What?
not.
I'm not Eve.
Wow, it's complicated.
So this podcast just got really interesting. And this is my 4-year-old Ivy.
Hey, Ivy.
Not in the video.
She's not on screen.
Come in. She's in screen now.
There she is. So, speaking of strange things that happen in China, when I carry my kids outside, because here,